Hey there, everyone. Rambling Collector here, and welcome back to a second live stream for all of you guys. So, for this one here, as I've mentioned before in both community polls for a while now, I- I've mentioned before that I've had a whole lot of manga that I've had scattered around, not just a whole lot of collected series like, say, Stars or No Guns Life or things like that, but more importantly, just regular one, two, or three different manga volumes that I've had in my collection. And it was only just now, after having a chance to finally be able to read through them and see just what exactly I had in store, that I was finally able to realize I've got a bunch here, maybe a little bit too much. So, what I decided to do was do one of two live streams where I talk about some of the more scattered manga volumes that I have collected in my time as a reader. So, that being said, this one is going to be devoted to only the one or two manga volumes, well, up to one or three, I should say. And I'm going to save some of the larger collected pieces for a much later date. That way, at the very least, it'll be a lot more fun. So, that being said, let's get started with our first volume here. First up, we're going to talk about a original manga piece called Bound. So, this one here is an interesting one, as I actually collected it from a local convention that I went to at one point, just to drop by at one point, and I've got to say, the artwork, first of all, is fantastic, and it is created by Matt Forsyth, Therese Lewis, and Kevin Lill. And I will say this much: I desperately want more from this manga to see more volumes like this. Because this was actually a really good sci fi, and it actually reminded me a lot of Ghost in the Shell, especially with the artwork shown here, which I will show now. I mean, look at that. Artwork like this is not something you can find anywhere, which a lot of manga artists do very well, but stuff like this takes a lot of time and creativity. And that is one thing that I really enjoyed about this as a as a self-made project, and this is one reason why I stand with self-published authors or self-creators, because they have the time and devotion to create something beautiful like this. As for the story-wise, it feels like a dystopian in science fiction world, or cyberpunk, I should say, which is probably why I say this gives me Ghost in the Shell vibes. But in all honesty, I thoroughly enjoyed this one, and I really hope that there is going to be a second volume sometime in the future, especially if it's like this. Now, with that being said, let's move on to collection number two. We are here to talk about, let's see here. Next up, we have volumes 1 through 3 of Dororo and Hyakimaru. So, a lot of people may know this one as a samurai demon possession type of deal. But I will say, though, this one really caught me by surprise because I've heard a lot of mentions of Dororo and Hyakimaru, but I did not know anything about it until finally reading, at the very least, the first three volumes of it, as you can see here. And to be quite honest, I actually really enjoyed it when I finally sat down to read more of it. Like I said, I've been going on like a total book purge of finishing a lot of the books that have been sitting unread on my collection for a while, and Dororo and Hyakimaru was definitely one of them up there. Hyakimaru's backstory as the son of a noble lord, or being cursed and having his body parts stripped away from him, and now he has to go on a full blown quest to essentially reclaim his body. Every single scrap of himself that he can find, from his ears to his eyes, to his very ligaments. That is a horrifying process to think about, that this man is essentially a walking artificial human who is slowly regaining his humanity piece by wretched piece. And that takes a lot of spirit and determination. And with Hyakimaru especially, he has definitely become one of my favorite characters already, just with the fact that he is very grim, but it's really fun to watch him rediscover his humanity over the course of this. And the artwork is amazingly well done. The attention to facial features, the combat, the attention to the time period that this is taking place in, aka Old Japan. I genuinely loved it, and I really hope to see more of this, and maybe at some point, if I collect more of this series, do a full review of it for the future on this channel. But that's up to you guys to decide if I should. I really enjoyed this, and I hope to at some point do a review for it in the future. But let me know what you guys think. Is this worth reading more into or not? Next up, we shall be talking about one of the classic death game series, Danganronpa, by Spike Chunsoft, Takashi Sukumi. And I will say this much, Danganronpa is one that I have heard of. I even have the anime for it in my collection somewhere. But the manga definitely interested me. And the funny thing is, my girlfriend is the one who actually gave this one to me. And she genuinely liked it herself. She was a big fan of it at one point. But she actually gave me the manga to see what my own personal opinions on it were. And needless to say, I thoroughly enjoyed every second of this from start to finish. And once again, this is a manga that I have not finished yet, but after reading the first 2 volumes, I'm definitely interested to see more of what happens. Especially since I might be a sucker for the death game genre in a way. I mean, I have seen Squid Game at the very least, and Danganronpa seems like it would be up my alley. That as well as Mirai Nikki, which I have seen half of the anime, but that is something I definitely need to go back and finish. As for the artwork, well, what can I say? It is very good, very intense, and honestly, very clean for artwork, or I will say. The attention to detail is really well done. The facial expressions are also really good. I like how this has a steadily climbing horror aspect to it. But I also really like this one panel here of all the main competitors crowded in one room together. I don't know, something about that is just interesting. But for me, I genuinely hope to at some point read more Danganronpa at some point, but that'll be for in the future. Next up, we have one that I'll probably not be able to show very safely, but let's start with it anyway. Succubus and Hitman, which I've collected the first 2 volumes of. Now, this one, as you can already tell, is a much more darker and risque manga series. I don't know how many volumes are currently out as of right now, but just in these first 2, it really tells a very gripping and very not safe for kids its story. You have it where, here, let me see here. This man right here makes a deal with a demon to be able to come back to life after watching his family be assaulted and killed right in front of his eyes, and he vows vengeance by hunting down the gang member heads who were in charge, as well as finding the man responsible for killing both his mother and his sister right in front of him. I'm genuinely curious to see where more of this goes, especially with the supernatural aspects of it, the demon contracts, but also, most of all, just the great action sequences here. And honestly, I can't really show this because it's a lot more risque, but the artwork is fantastic. It is really well done, tells a very gripping and very dark story, and this is definitely one that I would recommend if you're looking for something like that. Whether it's something to do with the supernatural, or if you're in the mood for some fan service, or if you want to see some cool gun revenge story action, definitely would recommend checking this one out. But be warned, if you have a very sensitive taste, don't go into this one unless you are prepared. Next up, we have the classic Shonen Jump's Bleach, which I currently have the first 3-in-1 collection here. So, Bleach, I have a very interesting relationship with because, on one aspect, a year or so ago, back on Halloween, I actually did a Halloween challenge where I watched mostly horror anime, and until then, I had not even seen a scrap of Bleach that I'm aware of. But with Bleach, I got to at least like the first 20 or so episodes, did not pursue it. I have no idea why. But in all honesty, even after reading the first 3-in-1 here, which, frankly, if you're a hardcore collector of big manga, this is a way that I would recommend it if you want to both save up money, but also will have more bang for your buck. Because while these 3-in-1s might be a bit more pricey, at the very least, even if you're collecting a bunch of individual novels, or individual volumes, I should say, this makes it a bit more of a cleaner collection piece, because then it's like, oh, I have the first 3 right here in this one large paperback. So this is the way I would probably recommend at the very least picking up the manga. And I will say this, Tita Kubo, I don't know if I mispronounced that name or not. I apologize if I did. But he's a fantastic writer and artist. Like, just the manga alone on itself has a really great artwork here, as shown. Great action sequences, great artwork, but I also like how there's a balance between the comedy as well as the action sequences. It knows when to be serious and when to be funny, though sometimes it can be a bit more funny over serious. And considering the dark subject matter that takes place here, I mean, these are spirits of dead people getting possessed and turned demonic or into hollows and attacking random people or innocent spirits or humans. Therefore, having the Death Reapers popping up everywhere, it definitely seems like it'd be more in line for more serious manga artwork, but that's just me. But overall, though, I still really enjoy the comedy of it, as it feels very like hit you in the face, kind of gets your attention and all that stuff. I genuinely enjoyed that. So I might pick up more of it at some point. I'm not sure. I probably will go more of the 3-in-1s just to make it easier to read more of the story. That way, whenever I do a review for it, I'll have at least more to work with when it comes to the main story. Next up, we have another Death Games one. My god, I seem to be collecting these ones a bunch. Dead Man Wonderland, the first 2 volumes. So, Dead Man Wonderland is one that I've seen the anime first and have now started reading the manga, which I was lucky my local Barnes & Noble at least had the first 2 volumes for it for me to check out. But, oh dear god, I was not expecting how dark this manga could get. I mean, I knew of it from the anime. I knew how bloody and serious it could be, but wow. I'll say this much. Jinbei Kataoko and Kazuma Kondo definitely have written an interesting story, and the artwork itself speaks volumes. Like, Dead Man Wonderland is definitely one of those classics that I'll need to read more of at some point. That way, whenever it comes down to Halloween, maybe I could do a future review on that. Let me know what you guys think about that. But I will say it's a manga that I want to see more of because the anime, unfortunately, will probably never get a second season, which is a sad thing to think about because I genuinely loved it. Maybe I'm just a sucker for anime like that. But regardless, I really hope at some point, if it does get picked up by another studio, that Dead Man Wonderland is able to get the anime treatment that it deserves. Because I've heard some great things about the story, or beyond the anime. And I really hope to check out more of that sometime soon. So maybe this will be one I'll pursue more of in the future. Who knows? But next up, we have one of my absolute favorites, Black Lagoon by Rei Hiro. And oh my god, do I have a history with this manga and series. So, to give a little bit of backstory here, Black Lagoon, along with other series like Attack on Titan and Blue Exorcist, was one of my first endeavors into anime back when I was in high school. Back then, I did not know anything about anime. I know of a few movies like Wolf Children, Spirited Away. Hey, all of that. I knew of those films, but I did not know about the wider world of anime. So to me, anime back then, since I didn't really look it up all that much, looking it up, having Black Lagoon, Blue Exorcist, and Attack on Titan as my first tastes of what anime series could be like, I was absolutely blown away, and especially by Black Lagoon. Just all the femme fatale, I was wielding guns, the crazy characterizations, just the very gray or dark morality of this series really captivated me when I was first watching it, and it's still one of my all-time favorite animes to go back and rewatch. I can never get tired of it, and to me, it feels almost like I am asking the question of, what if Quentin Tarantino had the ability to make an anime with his unique style? That is what I would compare Black Lagoon to. And I will say the artwork itself, absolutely fantastic, as always. So if you are a fan of Black Lagoon, I will say this much, please go check out the manga. I feel like the more the manga sells, the more likely we're going to be able to get more of an anime for it. Because as of right now, it's currently sitting on 29 episodes, which is longer than a normal 24 episode, 2-season anime usually gets. So go check it out. There's apparently a new volume coming out later this year, like in December, and I am desperately going to start picking up more of this manga just so I can be able to catch up with the stories so far and eventually do a full review for it on this channel. As of right now, I'm only sitting on just the first volume. So as of right now, we're currently up to like 12 for it, so it's gone beyond the Japan arc and Roberta's Blood Trail, but I am really going to be checking out more of this whenever I have the chance. Now, for the next one. This is an interesting one. because how many of you will know about No Game, No Life? If you do, then you may or may not have heard of this series here, Clockwork Planet by Yu Kamiya, the creator of No Game, No Life. And to be honest with you, when I first heard that this series was created by the same guy who made No Game, No Life, I was a little bit skeptical, considering just how extreme No Game, No Life is. No matter how entertaining it is, you gotta admit it's a little extreme. But Clockwork Planet really surprised me. Within just the first 3 volumes that I've been able to collect here, it tells a very compelling story of gearworks and automatons and a collapsing city, corrupt governments, all of that stuff. And especially advanced gear like automatons. I don't know why, but whenever a storyline features heavy things on like steam power or gear cybernetics, things like that, gear like automaton, it genuinely grabs me by the horns and never lets go. I thoroughly enjoy it every single time. And to be quite honest with you, I still love it to this day. Like for me, No Game No Life is one that I have at least read the first 2 books of, and I currently have the third in my collection, but still remains to be read. But in that time, reading Clockwork Planet, it really makes me wonder why nobody talks more about this series in general. I think it deserves a chance to actually shine in the spotlight more, and I did hear that there is an anime for it, so I might check that out sometime. But in the meantime, I've heard that the manga itself only goes up to like 10 volumes, which is sad. But that does mean that at the very least I've got 7 more volumes to go out of this one before it eventually does end. And I really like the idea of how a young boy who has very sensitive hearing is able to tell how the tells of when a city block is currently under duress or is about to plummet or when a machine needs to be fixed. He has the unique, I want to say, technomancer vibe. And especially the fact that he has a connection to a very famous automaton is fairly interesting. But again, just to show off the artwork here, let me see if I can at least pull up the volume 1. I mean, look at that. Very clean, very well done. And go into an action sequence here if I can find a good one here. Let me see here. Yeah, when it goes into detail like this, that is enthralling. I mean, look at that. That is some very well done artwork, and I genuinely believe it is worth checking out. Next up, we have a more controversial pick. That being, of course, Prison School by Akira Hiramoto. I was actually lucky enough to pick up the first volume of this series because I'd heard a lot of things about it at one point. With Prison School, I understand it's one of those over-the-top anime fan service series, and believe me, I did try and give this one a chance, especially with this one. And I will admit, the premise is interesting of having a regular high school where 5 boys, the first in a new co-ed system, in what was previously an all-female school. Well, them being exposed to all of this, being in a whole new environment, being the outnumbered class, is pretty interesting. However, I will say, even for me, the fan service feels really uncomfortable and over the top. I am sorry. But it really does feel that way. I think this might be one of the few manga series that I genuinely do not finish. I don't know why. There's something about this makes me feel really uncomfortable, or at least it feels like it's going a little bit more over the top than I'm usually used to. Who knows? I might give it another chance, but I don't know yet. But frankly, if you are interested in Prison School, oh, that is totally fine. But for me, it might just not be my cup of tea unless you will suggest I give it another chance or at least dive further into it. We'll see. Now to get into another Death Games one. God bless, I really have picked up a lot of Death Game ones. Next up, we have Alice in Borderland. And as our next one. And let me just tell you guys, reading the first 2 volumes of this series after my girlfriend was hyping it up completely, it lives up to the hype. I will say that right now. The intensity of having Ryohei Arisu being a normal high schooler, slacking in life, only now being exposed to essentially a life or death situation where he has to get his game together, otherwise he and his friends are genuinely going to die. It was very interesting. I feel like this is a manga series I will definitely be doing a review for sometime, at least a full one in the future. Because, first of all, I like the fact that it's a lot of a thicker volume in this case. You could argue that it's like two thin volumes in one, and that probably might be the case. But I like these manga volumes whenever they're a much thicker variety, as it gives you more bang for your buck. And more than that, it's honestly a lot of fun. Because then you really get to experience more of the story. You get to spend more time with these characters. And depending on how big these books can get, which some of them can get pretty ridiculous, it just gives you that much more time in this world. That way it doesn't feel like it has to end so soon, like it would with a regular comic book or even a smaller manga volume. But if you're in the mood for something that is genuinely going to grip you from start to finish, I would recommend picking up Alice in Borderland. I am going to find more volumes of this series because, by God, do this ever enthrall me. And the artwork, especially, is gorgeous to look at. I love the dark intensity of it. I mean, look at this. Something like that is bound to grip anyone who is in the mood for a great art style, but also more than that, the sheer intensity of it. I will say one of the best ones is this scene right here, where you have either a bunch of players either completing missions or dying. This whole panoramic view here, absolutely enthralling. So this is definitely one I'm going to be picking up more of here sometime soon. And Haro Aso, you did a fantastic job with this series, and I cannot wait to see more. And for our final volume for this first live stream, we're going to be talking about one you all may or may not know. We are going to be talking about the first volume of the master edition of this series, Tsutomu Nihei's Blame. A very heavy cyberpunk series, which I actually picked this up from one of my local comic stores, if you can believe that. I don't know, something about this one was genuinely pulling me in, and I really wanted to find out more. I did not expect a heavy cyberpunk series involving layers upon layers of machinery that has been continuously building itself further and further up, to the point that mankind barely even remembers what the surface of Earth looks like. And apparently there is a one-volume prequel series that is out now for this very series. So honestly, even after the first volume, which left me feeling, I will say it was very interesting. Wasn't sure if it was my cup of tea, but there's a curiosity there that I can feel that I really wanted to find out more. Not to mention, though, the artwork, especially. Oh, dear God, look at this artwork. Yeah. If you ever pick up Blame, you'll be in for a great ride with this one. And I would definitely recommend picking it up if you're a fan of cyberpunk series or more of a kind of a lone wolf, much more show don't tell type of series, because this feels like a cyberpunk version of Samurai Jack in some cases. Especially with how the character himself rarely ever talks, but whenever he does, you usually take him seriously. Sort of like how you do with Jack whenever he finally talks, but more often than not, this manga takes the time to be silent and show the world that they are living in. And it's a very depraved and very dark and very depressing world that really reminds me a lot of Warhammer, in some cases, but not a whole lot. I will say, though, go and pick up Blame if you're interested in cyberpunk, or if you will have a different opinion, please feel free to let me know that as well. With that being said, this will wrap up the first live stream of this duology of having a little bit too much manga and a little bit too much time on my hands. But whenever I do the second live stream, I hope you all will be able to enjoy it as well if you have enjoyed this one here. I genuinely hope to see you all again in a future live stream, and eventually, I might do more of those. We'll just have to wait and see. But for now, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you have any manga recommendations or if you recognized any of the manga I've talked about here today, please feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. This is Rambling Collector, signing off for now. I'll see you all in the next video, guys. Adios.